Right. We have a PlayStation 5 come in, it's having the overheating issue. Whereas whenever we're playing PS5 version games, it'll cut out. So we're just going to go ahead and clean it out and take the liquid metal off and reapply it. So I'm just going to show you in live time how that works. So it doesn't look like too dirty, but it's usually pretty common. There's some dirt up in here, which means that there's a lot more down in there, and I can also see some along the edge right in here on the motherboard. The customer said that he did clean it. However, he said that he just took the fan out to clean it. So we're gonna go ahead and take it apart here. So I've already loosened up most of the screws around the side. We're just gonna take this off. So this PlayStation has never been opened before. We know that because of the little warranty sticker here. The only thing he did was take the fan out. So it's always good when it's never been opened before and it's having issues. If it was open before and having issues, usually I run into a bigger problem. And we never want that to happen. Alright, so we can already see some dust has accumulated here, all along in here. And there's like a light layer of dust in there, as well as on the little plastic frame here. We're gonna go ahead and dust that off real quick. So whenever people tell me like that they, took out their fan and they cleaned it and stuff, I have to, explain to them that it does help a little bit, but it doesn't actually solve the issue. And the reason for it is dust gets trapped inside of the console blower where the fan is not at, which means that there's obviously going to be an issue. Hang on a second, I got some dust in my mouth. Ugh, that was gross. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so if the dust is accumulated where the fan is not at, there's obviously going to be an issue. There's going to be a problem with overheating, and the reason for that is, maybe we can see some dust right there, filling up right here. We're going to go ahead and give this a light dusting real quick, and then we're going to take off the side panel back here so we can release the other two screws from the other side. And that way that we can take the whole thing apart. So if you watch my other video, when I said, the PlayStation 5 infamous overheating issue, then you'll know that it's not just from the console being dirty, it's also the liquid metal inside of it. And on top of that, it's also the settings. So there's a whole bunch of factors that play in here. Because if you try to just do one or the other, it's actually not going to work. And I've trialed and errored this for quite some time to see what the issue actually was. And it turns out that I need to fix all of those things in order for the PlayStation to work again. Otherwise, it's just going to keep doing it. So instead of standing it up as well, we're going to have to lay it down on its side from now on, which for one is also going to help support the HDMI port a little bit better. Because that's probably our biggest repair that we do here is PlayStation 5 HDMI ports. go ahead and take all the screws out here. We want to be able to access the APU on the motherboard, and the opposite side, which is the heatsink. So we need to extract the liquid metal from both of those and clean the area off and reapply it. The liquid metal that's used inside here creates like a fog, so whenever the console is standing up, the liquid metal obviously falls because gravity is the thing, and as it falls, it like leaves a tiny layer of liquid metal behind, and I guess that just like overheats and creates like this weird fog behind it. And with that fog, you can't actually spread the liquid metal out evenly anymore. You have to take it off. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when we get this open here. I don't think they could have used any more screws. Sometimes from the factory, these things come in really bad though. Like where the screws go in, they'll be completely sideways, or the screw holes won't be correct. Sometimes missing screws. Sometimes the screws will actually be just completely stuck. Alright. So now that we have all the screws out, we can go ahead and take this off here. Alright, we're going to set that to the side there. And now we need to take off the bracket here. So this actually puts pressure on the APU back here, which is a good thing, because when the console heats up, most of the heat will actually come to the APU here. Obviously there's heat in other areas, which is where that little like thermal gunk is here. So we're going to go ahead and lift this out. Alright, so there's our culprit. As you can see, there's like a bare spot in the middle here, which is what I was talking about. It creates like this fog behind it, and so there's no liquid metal right there to help the heat transfer for the APU. So that's what causes like the overheating problem, is obviously when you start to play a demanding game like a PlayStation 5 version game, an NBA 2K, anything like that, anything with like a big map or a lot of graphics. It won't allow for proper heat transfer, and so that blank spot there in the middle on both the APU and the heat sink here is what causes the overheating. So we're just gonna have to move all that liquid metal off and then suck it into a syringe. Oop. And once we do that, we're gonna go ahead and take the heat sink out and completely clean it. So we're just going to move all of this to one area. That way we can suck it up into the syringe. This stuff is really messy. So when we're dealing with it, we need to be really careful. If it splatters anywhere, on the motherboard, it will ruin the motherboard. If it splatters anywhere on the copper of the heatsink, it will start to eat away at it. If it splatters on this aluminum piece here, it'll like mark it. Even if you try to clean it off, it'll still be like a little hazy. So you gotta be really careful when dealing with this stuff. Alright, now that we got it in the corner there, we're going to go ahead and suck it into the syringe. looks like we got most of it. There's still just a little bit here. All right. Now we can go ahead and start cleaning it off with alcohol and get that fog off there. We'll get the whole area clean. Let me zoom in on this so we can see it a little better. It's probably not the greatest quality. I don't know what's going on with my camera, but this is the area that we're cleaning here. Alright, so I'm going to use some alcohol to get all of that down into one area, so hopefully we can lift it off easier. Now this stuff is a pain to work with. It's not easy at all. It did splatter a little bit when we were lifting it. That's alright. Alright, so it looks like it's coming off really well. You just don't want it to like spread around, because if it starts spreading around, it's hard to contain. Alright, so there's a couple like little clumps here and there, and that's alright. Just want to get it all to one area. Hopefully we can lift it. May not be able to lift it with this one. We'll see. Yeah, sometimes you need to use a dry, non-alcohol saturated cotton swab to get that off there. So we're gonna go ahead and get a new one to get that off. Alright, let's try to move everything back to one spot again. These cotton swabs aren't that great. If you get like the regular cotton swabs like you would use in your ear, those ones actually work really well compared to these ones. These ones don't have very much padding on them, so it doesn't really like absorb. So now we can clean it up a little bit more with alcohol. All right. We're just going to go ahead and run circles around right here. And then what you'll need to do is kind of like a polish. So you'll kind of have to like polish the area with a dry cotton swab. You just want to make sure that you get most of the fog off. If there's like some scorch marks on it, most of the time they'll stay. Sometimes you can get them off, but most of the time they'll stay, which that's fine. You just want to get the fog off, that's the main part. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now we can go ahead and take off this aluminum piece here. I think that's all the screws. Yep. Alright, so this is the bottom side. As you can see, there's a bunch of dust on it. This is what I was telling you about. So even though you clean out where the fan is at the top, it doesn't necessarily mean that, even if it looks clean, it doesn't necessarily mean that the console is clean. Because a lot of times in a PlayStation 5, the dust will settle at the bottom of the console. Because again, gravity is a thing. And you are not able to blow it out from the top. So even with the heatsink here, you can see that that's pretty dirty. It's not like one of the craziest ones I've seen, but even a tiny bit of dust can cause this issue in the PlayStation 5. Alright, so just like that, a lot better, more clean. Now we can set that to the side, and of course, where most of the dust is going to go is on the power supply. Hang on just 1 minute. Spam caller. That's pretty annoying, especially considering the fact that this is a business. But so yeah, most of the dirt is going to settle on the power supply, and you don't want dirt to be on here because that's gonna dirt and dust and stuff, because that's gonna cause issues. So there's some right there, and then of course there's a bunch right here. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. You don't want that stuff to settle in there like this, because it causes overheating problems and can actually cause power issues eventually. I'm going to go ahead and dust that off. Alright, now that looks a lot better. And of course we need to clean out the tray here, because there's a lot of dust in here. We just need to get most of that cleaned out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get as much of it as you can. Because you don't want it blowing back into the heatsink and causing more issues again. Alright, so that looks a lot better. Now that we have all the dust out, we're going to go ahead and put everything back together. So we're going to put the power supply back in. Now, of course, we want to make sure we route the cables the right way. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and throw the heatsink back in. So obviously, as you can tell already, it looks a lot better than before. throw this aluminum piece back on there, all cleaned off. Just want to make sure you get all the ribbons and stuff out of the way, ribbon cables. Alright, we're just going to line the screw holes for the heatsink up. It's going to sit a little bit lower. That's alright. This will suck it up into place here. Alright, now we can go ahead and reapply the liquid metal. So it's already sticking really well, as we can see there. And then I have a dedicated cotton swab that I use. It's a clean cotton swab that I use for this liquid metal. Just want to make sure it has a clean surface on it. See, it has a liquid metal on it already, which is good. It helps not to lift the liquid metal that you're already using off, because you want to keep as much on as you possibly can. We're just going to dab around until we get it full coverage here. And then we can kind of lightly brush over the top. Get it as even as possible. So remember earlier how we had that bald spot there in the middle? It's no longer there. So that looks good. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing to the motherboard here. So we're going to move this over. And we can kind of lower this here for this one. Alright, so same thing as before, we just want to move all of the liquid metal to one spot. It's not going to be perfect, especially on this this side, the APU side. It's a little bit harder to deal with. Alright, so it looks like it's grouping up pretty good. Usually this doesn't happen this well. I think it's just because I'm live streaming. Someone's looking out for me, right? Alright, so now that it's all in that area, in that corner, we can go ahead and extract that with our syringe. And we're just going to run this around the sides, make sure there's no more stuck in between. Alright, that looks pretty good actually. A little bit right here. Alright. And now we can go ahead and clean that off with a cotton swab and alcohol. Let's try to get the surface as new as possible. Again, it's not going to be perfect, and that's alright. We just need it to work for what we're doing. And try to stick all this together, see if we can. and it's easier to lift it. There we go. Alright, and take a clean one, see if we can lift that off. There we go. Perfect. Alright, now we can sort of just clean the area here. And this is getting that fog off that we were talking about. It's not going to be perfect with the alcohol swab, which is fine. We'll just grab a clean swab and sort of do like a little buffing, I guess you can say. Alright, now we can buff it out and get that surface nice and shiny. Alright, so you can see like a little bit of black stuff on here, and that's that fog that I keep talking about. Alright, so it looks pretty good. Now we can go ahead and reapply the liquid metal that we extracted earlier. We may have to take some from the heat sink. It didn't look like there was too much. Oh, it might be fine. Looks like there's plenty here. Alright, then we're going to use our dedicated Q-tip again to clean that, or to move it around. The same thing as the heat sink, we're just going to dab so that it sticks. Alright, now that we have a nice fluid surface there, we can go ahead and start putting everything back together now that we've cleaned everything out. So we can go ahead and come back to the console itself and put it back together. So now we obviously have an even layer of the liquid metal here, and we have an even layer of the liquid metal back on the motherboard here. So we can go ahead and throw this back on. Alright. So just gonna plug these little ribbon cables in. And throw the little bracket back on here. Alright, now I don't think I put this next part here in the video that I made for the PS5 infamous overheating issue. I may have, but I don't think I did. And that is these little areas here. So we have these spots here, which obviously are supposed to, cool down this area, but we just need to take these off, ball them back up, and then put them back where they were. You don't want to leave these flat like they were, because if you do, it's just gonna, heat up And the whole point of doing what we're doing is to stop the overheating. So we need to ball these back up and put them all on here. Right. So now that we have these ones done, there is a row. See how there's 4 of these little what are these things called anyways? Like a thermal like paste pad stuff. Starts out as a paste, turns into a pad, I guess. So there's 4 right here, but the problem is that there's 6 right here, right? So we got 4 that are covered and these 2 are not covered. Why they don't put 2 more extra spots, I don't know. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take some from either side here and just put it right on top. And these ones we don't have to take them off of here because they're still covered really well. Like if they were bare, they had bare spots in them, we would obviously take them off, but we don't need to. Alright, the next ones we need to cover are right here. And those are right there. So we just need to take those off and do the same thing. Just ball them up a little bit. So as you can see, there's obviously a lot of work that goes into stopping these from overheating again. Now that we did all of that, we can go ahead and throw this back on here. And it's going to sit a little wonky now because we just balled all those up. So it's going to sit a little higher. And that's alright, we'll just push down a little bit. And then once we start screwing it, it'll obviously fix itself. So we're going to go ahead and screw all the screws back in, which is the fun part, right? So whenever I screw these in, I always do it in corners. That way that this panel here sits right. So if you don't put this panel on here right, the screws will go in all sideways and stuff, or it'll just be a lot harder to put it together. Alright, so now that we cleaned it out and the liquid metal, we extracted it, we cleaned underneath it and placed it back. Of course you want that like mirror finish, basically, I guess you could say, when putting the liquid metal back on. You want it to be completely covering the heatsink spot for it and the APU. That is going to help with the problem. So there's a couple of problems, you know, as I explained already, which is, for one, standing the PlayStation 5 up is bad. It's not good. Which side you should lay it on also matters. You should lay it on the right hand side. If you lay it on the left hand side, for one, the HDMI port will more than likely break immediately. But on the right hand side, the port has a better stance. And then of course, when it comes to the overheating problem, laying it down will help the liquid metal not fall, because obviously gravity is an issue here. Now I did see that there was like some sort of like lawsuit or something like that against Sony for this. I don't think it actually got anywhere, because when they came out with it, they said, oh yeah, stand the PlayStation 5 up. You know, they even come out with a base for it and everything like that, but standing it up causes a lot of issues. I don't know where that ever went, but thankfully we know how to fix the issues. And we are more than happy to help people. So yeah, those little thermal like pad paste things in there, those are also an issue. So you got the liquid metal, those little thermal pads. You have cleaning the entire system out perfectly. You need to make sure that you disassemble it completely instead of just cleaning where the fan is, because most of the dust settles in the bottom. And then of course laying it down instead of standing it up. And the last thing that we're going to do once we get this all put together is we're going to go through the settings and change the settings, because there is a little glitch in the settings here. So we have one screw left over. That's because this is the disc version, so the screw will go on the outside there. I need to clean this out a little better. All right, so now we can go ahead and put the disk drive back in here. Oh wait, it's like we have to put the little antennas back first. Let's see if we can get this tape to stick here. You gotta make sure that you wire this back on right, otherwise the disk drive won't sit right. I'm gonna go ahead and throw the disk drive on here and make sure all those holes are aligned. Good to go. And then we can plug the ribbon cable back in and put the outer shell back on. So this little foam piece here, this like goes back behind here where the SSD is. It falls out, it's not really needed. So we're just gonna take that out so there's no fumbling debris around in here. And then that little screw that we had left over here goes right here in the disk drive. And now we can go ahead and put these little cables back in. This one goes to the disk drive as well. This is what adds the power to the disk drive. The little ribbon cable in there is the one that displays the data. And of course the fan, we're going to brush that real quick. Make sure that that's good to go. So we don't want to blow more dust back into the console after we just cleaned it. Alright, so that is good to go. And go ahead and toss that back in there. Plug it up. And get all those cables out of the way. Cable management, right? Alright, and then we're going to screw this down here. Alright, then we can throw the SSD cover on. Just make make sure there's no dust. There's a little bit of dust on here, so we're gonna dust that off real quick. Sometimes like the dust will, like if you're in a high humidity area, the dust will stick on there, so it won't actually go back into the system, but it'll leave like a little like discoloration, and that's perfectly fine. All right, so now that we have all that together, we can go ahead and throw the panel back on this side. Beats, huh? And then we're gonna flip it over. This side still looks pretty good from when we dusted it off. So now we just need to throw these two screws back in here. And these are actually what holds the console to this back panel here, besides the screws from the other side, where the plastic tray is on the outside. So now we can go ahead and we're gonna plug this up and plug it up to the TV, and then I'll show you how we change the settings for that. So I'm gonna go plug this up real quick. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move this over here. All right, should we do some gameplay too? Nah, we're not gonna do that. All right, let's go ahead and move this camera angle so you can see. So we've got it all plugged up here. Now we're just gonna plug a controller into it. That way that we can get into the settings here. So again, laying it down on the right hand side, it's going to help it. As we can see, this is the right hand side, so the PS symbol will be showing and the Sony will be showing right here. That's how you know you have it on the right side. So it'll help with the HDMI port there, as well as overheating issues. Now we're going to plug this guy up here. Alright, well, it doesn't look like his USB is working. Let's try it again. Alright, let's try that again. And we're good. That's just for the controller. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and enter in his profile. And once we're in here, we're going to go to the settings and down to system, HDMI. So obviously he hasn't turned these off before, so he hasn't heard about the little software glitch that there is. Let me get you a little closer to this so you can see. Alright, so the first one is the enable HDMI device link. We're going to go ahead and turn that off. And then the enable HDCP, we're going to turn that off as well. Make your screen go black for a second, no big deal. Then we're going to come down to power savings, and in here we're going to see set time until PS5 enters rest mode, and we are going to turn this off completely. And the reason that we need to do this is there's a weird like software bug where something with the HDMI device link and with the what was that? Oh, the rest mode basically tells the system to turn off in order to like save itself or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, those are the settings that we need to change. So rest mode needs to be off, which is kind of unfortunate. But also HDMI device link is off and enable HDCP is off. You also want to make sure that your system software is always up to date because you don't want that to cause problems. Hey, how's it going?
Wrong place. Is Reaper's over here or?
Yeah, Reapers is right here. All right, sorry about that. We had a customer come in. So yeah, those are all the things you really need to know. So lay the PS5 down on its side, right hand side. Change the settings inside of system, HDMI device link, and power saving settings. The liquid metal needs to be extracted, replaced after cleaned, and then of course complete disassembly of the console in order to clean it thoroughly, and of course those little thermal pads that are inside of there. So thanks for watching. This is Reapers Electronics.